The streetlights cast long shadows across South Shore Drive as Staff Sergeant Lucas Martin's taxi pulled up to his red brick two-story home. It was 2 a.m. on a humid July morning, and the neighborhood was eerily quiet, the stillness broken only by the distant hum of crickets and the occasional rustle of leaves in the night breeze. After months in Afghanistan, all Lucas wanted was to surprise his wife Emily and hold her in his arms again. He wasn't supposed to be home for another 3 weeks. The early return was his gift to her. Their 5th anniversary was just days away, and Lucas had planned something special to celebrate their love, a surprise getaway to the cabin where they had spent their honeymoon. In his duffel bag, alongside his combat fatigues and dog tags, lay a delicate white gold necklace he had ordered specially from Dubai, its shimmering promise of affection hidden beneath layers of fabric. The cab driver, an elderly man named Earl, helped him with his bags. "Welcome home, soldier," Earl said, refusing the extra tip Lucas tried to give him. "Your family must be really happy to have you back." Lucas smiled, picturing the joy on Emily's face when she saw him. "They don't know I'm coming. I wanted to surprise them." Earl nodded knowingly, a twinkle in his eye, and got back into his cab, driving off into the quiet night. Lucas stood for a moment, looking at his house, a wave of nostalgia washing over him. Yet something felt off. There was a car he didn't recognize parked in front, a sleek black Chrysler with tinted windows and custom rims. Probably one of the neighbors got a new ride, he thought, but a knot began forming in his stomach. The house was dark except for a faint glow from their bedroom window upstairs. The porch light was off, which was strange. Emily always left it on at night, a beacon welcoming him home. As he approached, he noticed other small details that seemed wrong. The front garden, which Emily had tended meticulously, was overgrown, weeds twisting through the flower beds. Empty beer bottles lined the porch railing, a stark contrast to the warm, inviting space he remembered. Using his key, Lucas quietly opened the front door. The living room smelled different, an unfamiliar cologne mixed with the pungent scent of marijuana smoke. Their wedding photo, which had always sat proudly on the entry table, was face down. His heart raced as he instinctively sensed that something was dreadfully wrong. Then he heard it, muffled sounds coming from upstairs. His military training kicked in. Moving silently, he set down his bags and climbed the stairs, each step calculated and quiet. The sounds grew clearer, rhythmic creaking, heavy breathing, a man's low grunt. The master bedroom door was closed but not fully latched. Yellow light spilled through the crack, along with the unmistakable sounds of intimacy. Lucas felt his world tilting sideways, but his body moved with the calm precision that had kept him alive in combat. He pushed the door open, and the scene burned itself into his mind in fragments. Tangled sheets, brown skin against brown skin, his wife's legs wrapped around a stranger's waist, their wedding picture on the nightstand watching it all. Time seemed to stop. Nobody moved. Then Emily screamed. The man, muscular with dreadlocks and a tribal tattoo across his back, rolled off and reached for something on the floor. In the yellow lamplight, metal glinted, a gun. Lucas's training took over. Hesitation meant death. He crossed the room in 2 steps, caught the man's wrist before he could raise the weapon, and drove his fist into the man's throat. The gun clattered to the floor, and chaos erupted. What happened next played out like a horrible nightmare. Emily's scream pierced the air as the man gasped for breath, coming up swinging, fists connected with flesh, rolling on the floor, the gun sliding under the bed, blood spraying across the white walls in the chaos. Lucas's hand found the firearm, adrenaline surging through him as he felt the weight of the moment, the gravity of his actions. 2 shots rang out, echoing through the house. Then silence enveloped the room like a suffocating blanket. Lucas stood in the center of the chaos, the gun still warm in his hand. His military training had taken over during the fight, but now the soldier was fading, leaving just a man staring at the ruins of his life. He checked the stranger first. No pulse. Lucas's heart sank as he turned to Emily, whose body slumped against the wall, caught by a stray round that had passed through the man and into her shoulder. "Emily!" he shouted, rushing to her side. She was conscious but going into shock, blood staining her dress a dark crimson. "I'm sorry, Lucas. I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. His combat medic training kicked in. He grabbed towels from the bathroom, applying pressure to her wound. "Don't talk. Help is coming." But he hadn't called anyone yet. His phone was still in his duffel bag downstairs. The neighbors must have heard the shots. Surely someone would call. Or maybe not. Here in this part of Chicago, people learned to mind their business when they heard gunfire. As if reading his thoughts, police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. I didn't mean... Emily tried to speak again, but Lucas cut her off. Shut up, Emily. Just shut up. The sirens stopped outside, car doors slamming. Flashlight beams swept across the windows. Chicago police, open up! Lucas set the gun down carefully and walked downstairs, hands raised. He opened the front door to find 4 officers with weapons drawn. Don't move! Hands where we can see them. I'm Staff Sergeant Lucas Martin, he said calmly. I'm the homeowner. There are 2 people injured upstairs, 1 DOA. My wife needs medical attention. They cuffed him anyway, standard procedure, as they led him to a squad car. Neighbors emerged from their homes, filming with their phones. The next hours passed in a blur. The detective interviewing Lucas at the station was a middle-aged black man named Detective Williams. No relation to the dead man, he assured him. Walk me through it again, Williams said, the recording device on the table between them. Lucas told it straight. The early return, the strange car, the sounds upstairs, the gun under the bed, self-defense. His court-appointed lawyer, Patricia Morris, insisted the deceased had a weapon and a criminal record. My client is a decorated combat veteran who found armed intruders in his home, she stated firmly. 1 intruder, Detective Williams corrected. The other victim was his wife, who was participating in a home invasion by letting her lover in. Morris argued that the shooting was justified, but Lucas felt the weight of the truth hanging in the air, a truth he had never wanted to face. At Chicago Med, Emily underwent surgery to remove the bullet. Her parents arrived. Her mother cried while her father remained stone-faced. They had never approved of Lucas, believing their daughter could do better than a soldier. Now they sat in the waiting room, avoiding the news crews gathering outside, the tension palpable. By morning, the story was everywhere. Soldier catches wife with lover in deadly shooting on South Side. An Afghanistan war hero finds betrayal in marriage bed. Social media exploded with opinions, turning Lucas from a soldier into a villain. He served his country while she served everybody else, one post read. But none of it reached Lucas in his holding cell. He sat motionless, staring at the wall, seeing only the bedroom scene playing over and over in his mind. When exactly had his life derailed? Was it during his last deployment? Had the signs been there all along? Detective Williams sat at his desk in Area Central, surrounded by photos from the crime scene. The case seemed straightforward at first, a classic crime of passion, but something wasn't adding up. He picked up Job Williams's rap sheet, drug possession, assault, suspected ties to gang activity, but nothing in the past few years indicated a violent nature. His legitimate business, a chain of car washes, was doing well. The gun found at the scene was legally registered to him, but Williams felt that there was more to uncover. Detective Officer Thompson interrupted his thoughts. "You need to see this," she said, handing him a transcript of Emily's phone records. Hundreds of texts between her and Job went back 8 months, but there was something else. Messages to a burner phone discussing life insurance policies and deployment schedules. "There's more," Thompson said, recalling a break-in attempt at the Martin house months ago that had gone cold. Nothing stolen. It happened right after Sergeant Martin increased his SGLI to $500,000. Williams leaned back in his chair, connecting the dots. "You're thinking this wasn't just an affair? Maybe they were planning something bigger, waiting for him to deploy again." At Chicago Med, Emily was recovering from surgery, 2 uniformed officers standing guard outside her room. Detective Williams found her parents still there, Calvin and Regina Morrison, both retired teachers. "Lucy," Williams said, entering the room, "we need to talk." Emily looked small in the hospital bed, her left arm immobilized. "I already told the other officers what happened," she said defiantly. "You told them about the affair, but let's talk about the insurance policy and those interesting texts about your husband's deployment schedule." The color drained from her face as the weight of the investigation began to press down upon her. Meanwhile, at Cook County Jail, Lucas received his first visitor, his younger brother, Michael, a Chicago Transit Authority driver. "Man, what the hell?" Michael said through the visiting room glass. "I had to hear about this on the news. How's Mom taking it? How do you think she's doing?" Lucas replied, the weight of despair evident in his voice. At church right now, praying. The pastor's organizing support for your defense. Tell her not to bother. I did what I did. Michael leaned closer to the glass, urgency in his voice. Listen, bro, people out here are supporting you. Even Emily's friends from the salon are talking about how she did you dirty. Your army buddies started a legal defense fund. This ain't over. But Lucas barely seemed to hear him. You know what's crazy? He said, his voice distant. When I was in Afghanistan, every night I dreamed of coming home to her. Even when mortars were falling, knowing she was here kept me going. Now I wish I'd never come back. Back at Area Central, Detective Williams was building a different picture. Bank records showed large cash deposits to Emily's personal account, and Job's phone revealed deleted messages about taking care of the soldier problem. They were planning to kill him, Williams told his partner, probably during his next deployment, make it look like a combat death or an accident. The affair had gotten sloppy, but the real plan was the insurance money. So what now? Thompson asked. Lucas still killed 2 people. 1 person, Williams corrected. Emily's alive, and once she's stable, we're charging her with conspiracy to commit murder. The news hit Chicago's South Side like a bomb. At Super Clean Car Wash, where Job had run his main business, workers gathered to mourn their boss. Many hadn't known about his relationship with Emily, much less any murder plot. At Sharp Cuts Salon, where Emily worked, opinions were divided. Some defended her, pointing to Lucas's long absences, while others, like Shanice, felt betrayed. She sat right there, Shanice told reporters, pointing to Emily's empty styling station. Talking about how much she missed Lucas, how proud she was of him serving. Meanwhile, she was plotting with her side dude to kill him. That's cold. Social media narratives shifted from victim to villain. Wife and soldier in love triangle, allegedly planned murder, read one headline. War hero thwarted his own murder by coming home early. As the summer heatwave gripped Chicago, new details emerged. Detective Williams stood before a room of reporters at CPD headquarters, laying out the conspiracy they had uncovered. What initially appeared to be a tragic domestic incident was actually part of a larger criminal conspiracy. He explained, evidence suggests Mrs. Martin and Mr. Williams had been planning the death of Sergeant Martin for financial gain. Security camera footage from the car wash showed Emily and Job meeting late at night. Bank records revealed wire transfers to offshore accounts. A laptop found in Job's car contained research on untraceable poisons and accidents that could look natural in a war zone. The investigation revealed more players. Job's cousin worked at an insurance company and had helped fast-track Lucas's policy changes. A former cellmate of Job's was arrested for attempting to purchase untraceable weapons as part of the plot. Meanwhile, Lucas remained largely silent in jail, his attorney Patricia Morris building a strong self-defense case. My client, a decorated combat veteran, returned home to find armed intruders in his home, she repeated to the media. The fact that these intruders were plotting his murder only strengthens our case. The community rallied around Lucas. Local veterans groups organized protests outside the courthouse. His church collected funds for his defense. Even Emily's parents, learning of the murder plot, publicly supported their son-in-law. We failed to see what our daughter had become, Calvin Morrison told reporters outside the hospital. Lucas served his country with honor while she betrayed everything, her vows, her family, basic human decency. The case took another turn when investigators found videos on Job's phone. He'd recorded conversations with Emily, apparently as insurance. In one video filmed in their bedroom 2 months earlier, they discussed methods. Emily, it has to look natural, combat zone. Anything could happen, Job said. My connection says he can make it look like friendly fire. Costs extra, but it's untraceable. Whatever it takes, Emily replied. I can't spend another year pretending to be the proud military wife. The evidence was damning. The state's attorney's office charged Emily with conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, solicitation of murder, and insurance fraud. Several of Job's associates faced related charges. Lucas's case moved toward a rapid resolution. Given the circumstances and evidence of the murder plot, prosecutors agreed to reduce the charges to voluntary manslaughter. The death of Job Williams, while tragic, occurred during the commission of a felony in which he was a willing participant, the state's attorney announced. Mr. Martin's actions, while extreme, were influenced by reasonable fear for his life. The Cook County Criminal Courthouse buzzed with tension as Emily's preliminary hearing began. She appeared in a wheelchair, her left arm still in a sling, wearing county-issued beige scrubs instead of her usual designer clothes. Lucas sat in the gallery, flanked by his brother Michael and their mother, Gloria, a retired postal worker who had barely missed a day of court. He had been released on electronic monitoring. The Assistant State's Attorney, Karen Martinez, laid out the government's case. Your Honor, the evidence will show that the defendant, along with her deceased co-conspirator, engaged in a calculated plot to murder her husband for financial gain. This wasn't a simple affair gone wrong. This was a premeditated conspiracy to kill a United States soldier. The evidence was overwhelming. Investigators had recovered deleted emails discussing various murder scenarios. One particularly damning message from Emily to Job read, "Next deployment is in September. That's our window. After that, we'll be set for life." The courtroom was filled with tension as the prosecution laid bare the details of betrayal. Detective Williams will testify about the sophisticated nature of the plot, Martinez continued. They had multiple plans in place. Plan A was to arrange an accident during deployment. Plan B involved hired contractors in Afghanistan. They even researched ways to make it look like Taliban activity. During cross-examination, Emily's public defender tried to paint her as a victim of Job's manipulation, but the recorded conversations told a different story. In one video, Emily was clearly the one pushing for action. "We need to stop talking and make this happen. I'm tired of playing wife every time he FaceTimes. Tired of listening to him talk about our future when I want a future with you." The testimony that hit hardest came from Shanice, Lucy's former friend from the salon. She changed completely, Shanice told investigators. Started taking long lunches with Job, coming back with expensive gifts. One time, she laughed about Lucas sending her extra money for their anniversary, said he was basically funding their dates. During a break in proceedings, Gloria spoke quietly to her son. "Baby, I know this hurts, but God got you through war for a reason. He brought you home early for a reason." Lucas just nodded, his face impassive. The only time he showed emotion was during the playback of the surveillance footage from his house cameras. The footage showed Emily and Job entering the house multiple times over months, often staying overnight. More damaging were their conversations on the back porch, smoking weed and casually discussing murder. "Emily, it's too risky here. It has to be overseas," Job said. "My guy says Afghanistan's perfect. Things go wrong there all the time. Just make sure it's after the policy kicks in and make it clean. He deserves that much at least," Emily replied coolly. In the courtroom, Emily broke down during this playback, sobbing loudly until the judge ordered a recess. Her parents, sitting far from Lucas's family, left the courtroom in tears, the tension between them palpable. They had always hoped for a different outcome for their daughter, a life filled with joy and stability, not one marred by tragedy and betrayal. The weight of their disappointment hung heavily in the air as they stepped into the corridor, where whispers of the trial's proceedings echoed off the sterile walls. The preliminary hearing concluded with Emily being held without bail, the judge citing the severity of the charges and the disturbing nature of the evidence presented. As she was led away in handcuffs, Emily cast a fleeting glance at her parents, her expression a mix of despair and regret. They exchanged a look that spoke volumes, pain, confusion, and a longing for the days when their family was whole and unbroken. Days turned into weeks, and as the trial began to unfold, the media frenzy surrounding Emily's case escalated. News outlets plastered their headlines with sensationalized stories, framing her as a villain in a tragic love triangle. Social media exploded with opinions, turning public sentiment into a battlefield. Some rallied in her defense, citing her as a victim caught in a web of manipulation, while others condemned her for her role in Lucas's death. In the courtroom, the trial continued, and the prosecution laid out a compelling case against Emily. They presented evidence of her affair with Lucas, the calculated planning that had gone into their scheme, and the damning text messages exchanged between them. Each piece of evidence seemed to solidify the narrative of betrayal, painting Emily as a woman who had willingly chosen a path of deceit. As the defense took their turn, Emily's attorney attempted to frame her as a victim of circumstance, manipulated by Lucas's charm and promises. They argued that Emily had been swept away by the thrill of the affair, blinded to the consequences of her actions. Lucas watched from the gallery, his heart heavy as he listened to the arguments being made. He felt a mix of anger and sadness, torn between the love he once had for Emily and the reality of the betrayal that had shattered their lives. During a particularly emotional moment in the trial, Emily took the stand, her voice trembling as she recounted her side of the story. Her tears flowed freely, a river of regret and sorrow that resonated with many in the courtroom. As the trial progressed, the courtroom buzzed with anticipation. The jury deliberated, weighing the evidence against the emotional testimonies. Lucas held his breath, anxious yet resigned. He had come to terms with the fact that no matter the outcome, his life would never be the same. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the jury returned with their verdict. The judge called for silence as she prepared to announce the decision. Emily Thompson, you are hereby found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree, the judge declared, her voice steady but heavy with the weight of the moment. Given the severity of your actions and the loss of life, you are sentenced to 20 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections. Gasps filled the courtroom, and the reality of the verdict hit Philip like a freight train. Emily's face fell, her bravado crumbling as the gravity of her sentence set in. He felt a mix of relief and sorrow, understanding that justice had been served, but at the cost of a life once intertwined with his own. In the months that followed, Philip continued his journey of healing, focusing on rebuilding his life one day at a time. He found support in unexpected places, veterans groups, therapy sessions, and the community that rallied around him. With their encouragement, he began to share his story, speaking at events about the importance of mental health and the impact of betrayal on relationships. Philip found a renewed sense of purpose. He began volunteering with organizations dedicated to helping veterans transition back to civilian life, sharing his experiences and offering support to those navigating their own challenges. He discovered the power of connection and community, realizing that healing was not just an individual journey but a collective one. Emily's life continued behind bars, a stark reminder of the choices that had led to their tragic separation. As the seasons changed, Philip often thought of her, reflecting on the love they had once shared, the dreams they had built, and the heartbreak that ultimately tore them apart. He hoped for her redemption, for her to find peace within herself, even as he forged ahead, determined to create a future filled with hope, healing, and resilience. In moments of quiet reflection, Philip realized that while the echoes of betrayal would always linger, they would not define him. He was a soldier, a survivor, and now a man learning to embrace life again, one step at a time. We invite you to share your thoughts in the comments section below. And if you found this story insightful, please subscribe and leave us a like. We would really appreciate that.